Hi there, my name is Martin from the AppMaster.io team, and in this video we'll have a look at some of the tips and tricks that you can use to build better business processes. And let's start out by talking about the scheduler and how you can run your business process on a specific schedule. We are now in the Business Logic tab, and over here in the Scheduler tab, we'll be able to define a new job schedule. We'll have to give it this job a name and relate to a specific business process that we have defined. Now in here we'll be able to use and to change how we want this schedule to run, either daily, monthly, or periodically. So for example, every 1 hour or every 1 minute, etc. In here you also have, dependent on the type that you've selected, some more settings, such as for example, in the case of daily, at what time you want it to run, and what days of the week you want to run it on. You'll also have the option to enable automatic retry. In this case, if the business process fails for some reason, it will retry it for several times with a specific interval in between the different attempts. Over here, you'll also be able to define static parameters for your business process in case that it does have some input fields. In this case, our business process has only one field, which is number, which is an integer. So here we can define a static value for it, and then every time this business process is run with the schedule, the number will be equal to 10. Save, and just like that, your job is activated. Another important concept is refactoring, and this refers to encapsulating a sequence of functions into a specific business process to be able to reuse it later on and to make your business process look a bit more beautiful. So imagine that, for example, we have a for each loop, and for every element in this loop, we want to perform some number of actions to actually process this element. Instead of defining all of these functions over here, we can define a new business process, which will have, so let's say, called process element, which will have as its input the specific data type that we have in our loop. So in this case, it's a user. And then over here, we'll perform some number of operations. For example, expanding and making, maybe some calculations, etc. And in the output, we'll again have our final version, right? Modified version of this specific user. Now, for the simplicity of this tutorial, we won't actually be defining any functions over here. And then when we go back to our loop, what we'll be able to do is to go to the user created BPs tab over here and actually bring our business process, our new business process over here. And in this case, we now don't have to define all of the specific functions and calculations that we want to do inside of this business process. We can just connect our loop body, get our item, and as our output, we already will get the modified version of our user. Another benefit of, apart from a cleaner looking interface, is the ability to actually use this process element business process outside of this specific business process and to be able to reuse it in other instances with ease. Let's also talk about two very important functions, expand and make, which you can use to remap some of the variables that you get from the front end. For example, imagine that we have a case where we want to register some users, and then we want to define some default values for specific fields in the data model. For that, imagine that we get a business process with an input variable of the user coming from the front end as a model. And as the output, we will also get the modified user version over here, as well user model. Fantastic. So first of all, what we would have to do is to expand our user into all of its constituent fields. What we can do now from this is to actually now make a new user model And instead of connecting all of these fields to this new data model and getting them from the front end, actually define some default ones. For example, let's say that we want active to be true. Now we connect the other fields that we're actually using, for example, the login, the first name, the last name, the password. And let's imagine that the ID we want to also assign it dynamically, so we're also not connecting it. Now in the output, we get the modified version and we output from our business process. And just like that, we can take some data from the front end in our specific model and then add some default values onto it with expand and make. Let's now have a look at an advanced use of the switch statement. Imagine the following scenario. We have a switch block, and from the incoming data, we decide on which process we want to execute, P1, P2, or P3. Every process as an output has a success variable, which is a boolean. True if the process was executed successfully, and false if there was some kind of error. Now, we want to make sure that the process has been executed correctly before actually continuing our business process and going on to the next functions. How can we do this? Well, one option is obviously to use an if-else statement after each one of the processes and check it. In case that it's false, we want to raise an error and stop our execution. In case it's true, we go on to the next blocks. Now, obviously, this is not very sustainable because we would have to create this in if-else for each one of these processes. In our case, it's just 3, but maybe it's 10 or 20. Another option that we have, actually, is to set a variable. And in this case, we take the success value that we have over here, and we assign it to a variable of a boolean. Just like this. And now we repeat the process for the rest of the blocks. Great. And now when all of that is finished, we now run our if-else. And as you can see, we only have one if-else block now. So we connect all of our flow connectors over here. And connect our variable over here, which stores our result, and now decide if we want to continue the business process or not. And last but not least, let's talk about how we can get the request headers and set response headers for our endpoints in the API. Imagine the following scenario. You are connecting an already existing API in your company to AppMaster.io, and you are using response and request headers to transmit some of information between the two. What you can do is within the business process, go to functions, and then in the MISC section, you'll find get request header, set response header, and get request body. With the get request header, you input the name of the request that you want to get, and you'll have the value of that specific request that was done to the endpoint over here, with which you will then be able to analyze it and perform different types of actions inside of the business process. In the same way, you can also set a response header with a specific name and a value, and you can also get the request body in a string format. And these are the 5 tips to make your business process more efficient and cleaner. If you have more questions, you can go to the documentation section on our website, and also refer to the Telegram channel to ask questions directly to our team. Thank you.